Should you visit an institution housing crocodiles, you will probably find these beasts lying about like so many logs, unmoving, in an endless, motionless state, almost boring after a short time. Don't be fooled by crocodiles. The lack of activity conceals a cunning predator with a singular purpose: survival. He is deadly in defense, incomparable as a predator, and lightning fast in his strike. These are true tales of my African adventures. May this inspire you, deter you, caution you, and above all, entertain you. One fine day at the reptile park, a group of reasonably brainless 20-somethings were noisily moving about the place. We were apprehensive of this type of visitor. Over the years, we had had such visitors pick up tortoises from their pen and throw them to the crocodiles, or crack their shells on the brick paving, or upend them in the severe heat of January, February, and March, then watch them succumb to heat stroke, much to their amusement. Their cruel antics were endless. This lot were to receive a taste of their own medicine. 4 2-meter-plus crocodiles were housed in an enclosure with a 1.2-meter high wall. A moat lay between the wall and an island which filled most of the enclosure. At one point the moat was narrow, and a croc was lying there, its head towards the perimeter wall. One of the brain deads, keenly observed by our curator at this time, stated, "This crocodile is probably tame," he said with a chuckle. Before anyone could anticipate his next move, he leaned over the wall, he was thin and tall, and aimed a flat-handed blow to the side of the croc's head to prove his point. A lightning strike by the croc and a quick shake of its head produced a mangled mess that had previously been a hand. The shocked man turned towards the curator, who was now near him. He complained that the crocodile had bitten him and that he needed help. The curator, Brian, the man featured in the King Cobra story, said to him, seemingly emotionless and with years of pent-up feelings for such displays of utter stupidity, vandalism, and cruelty, "You are bleeding on my brick paving and making a mess." With these words, he caught his jaw with a strong right hook, flooring him. He ejected the bunch from the park, shredded hand and all. Nature Conservation had trapped 2 man-eating crocodiles in the Levuvhu River. This is in our northern districts. It is somewhere in this area that Jan Kuhlmann had witnessed the sacrificing of the maiden to the crocodile. He had captured a monster crocodile which had taken cattle for 3 generations in this river. I knew this crocodile. I had never seen a larger one than this before. It was a true monster. The pair of crocodiles which we had received from Nature Conservation had killed and eaten 13 people over a surprisingly short period. Their target was ladies from villages along the river retrieving water, doing their washing, and so forth. These crocs were quite large, 250 to 350 kilograms, we estimated, and around 3 to 4 meters long. We never weighed or measured our animals, as this was an enormous task, so we always only estimated. The male was larger than the female by virtue of one fact. She had a truncated tail. At least half the tail had been removed during some violent event, probably when she was quite young. We gladly accepted the crocs to boost our stocks. The nature conservation officers were not sure if one or both the crocs were the culprits, but the attacks in the river stopped. They called shortly after delivering the crocodiles and asked if we could possibly find a way of determining which of the crocs was the instigator, the principal man-eater. Being attacked by a crocodile must be one of the most shattering experiences one could ever not hope for. you would be dragged from the banks or shallow water and drowned. Your limbs would then be torn off, and the feast would then begin. I said to the conservation officials, "Sure, I have an idea how to find out whether one or both were the culprits." We had constructed a winter house for the crocs to help them through the Cape winters, which were miserable for crocodiles, and for us too at times. The winter house was long and had an enclosed, shallow pool running down the center about 800 millimeters to 1 meter deep. The water was clean and clear most of the time. 10 to 15 crocs lived in the overall enclosure and would all move into the winter house in bad weather and at night. If one opened the door to the winter house, all the crocs would usually charge out of the 2 tunnels leading back to their main dam and return later. The 2 man-eaters were now used to the new environment. One day I and all the staff opened the door to the winter house. We were now to see what the crocodiles did with the addition of the man-eaters. I stood at the end of the elongated water body. I stood near the water. All the crocs rushed out as usual, including the male man-eater. All, that is, with the exception of the female with the truncated tail. She slipped into the pool stealthily, and from the far side began to stalk me slowly and determinedly. An ominous sight. I was to be her next victim, she probably thought. We had found our man-eater. I withdrew to a safe distance before she broke water and peered at me with disappointment, before slipping back into the pool where she remained ever hopeful. We called nature conservation and confirmed the suspicions of all. Without a proper tail, it must have been difficult for her to capture her normal prey, catfish, and any other creature that could be secured in or near the water. She no doubt found humans a slow-moving and easy target. The male most likely just joined in for the meal once she had secured a victim. The mystery had been solved. I never go within 3 or 4 meters of any river, dam, or lake where crocs abound, and I would advise any others to follow suit. I have seen crocodiles move out of the water at incredible speed and take animals. Some of our crocs had outgrown an enclosure. I guess they were around 2.5 meters and needed moving to a larger home. We could drug them and move them, but I decided not to drug them, as it was quite easy to overdose and kill the creatures, especially in our day. I felt we had enough manpower to move them using our own strength. We had moved crocs by hand many times before, but usually not when they were larger than 2 to 2.5 meters. We were not very experienced as regards crocodile relocation. There were 4 of us available on the day. Generally, one would maneuver a sack over the crocodile's head with a pole, and it would remain quite motionless and in position. I was to climb over the wall, and at the word go, would dive on the croc, grasping it fully around the neck with my head pressed down against his on the sack, whilst the other 3 subdued it, pinning it to the ground, ready for lifting. I will not mention the names of the other 3 to save them embarrassment for their cowardly behavior. On the word go, I leapt forward as planned, but on wrapping my arms around the crocodile, I experienced a power I had not anticipated. The croc's reaction was so violent that the other 3 jumped out of the enclosure to safety, leaving me clinging to the unmanageable beast. It twisted, then began to roll towards the water, the infamous crocodile death roll. We hit the water, both thrashing. I could not let go as the crocodile was doing all in its power to bite my head, and its open jaw was now side-on against the side of my head. One wrong move and he would clamp his jaws around my head and face. He continued his roll in the water, and it felt as if I was in a washing machine. So violent was his roll that he broke free of my grip. His jaws snapped shut in front of my face, cracking like a rifle shot, then disappeared into the water. I scrambled up away from the pool and crocodiles and stood shaking on the island. My shirt had been ripped off, and a good deal of skin had been scraped raw from my face down to my belly, including my arms and knees. I must have looked a real sight, dripping blood and water. I left the park and went home for a shower. Once home, I took a warm shower, and as I came out of the cubicle, my good friend Roderick turned up. He took one look at me and had a great deal to say about my appearance. My wife, who at this point was beyond shock, as she half expected this type of thing most days of her life, simply provided me with a change of clothing and made us some coffee. I might add that we found a safer way to move the crocs.